on Talk Radio.
Listen, this guy's a nightmare. He's not a great guy, folks.
Well, you've got about 40 minutes to call me, 0344 499 1000, to join the great debate about all manner of things, including things which are just breaking. But let me first read at least one or two of a series of tweets from Andrew Spears, who says of my last guest, "This guy is a joke, a proper toff, being condescending to people who need cheap transport." Well, how cheap would it be, Andrew, this cheap transport, if your driver drove up a one-way street the wrong way, if your driver crashed the car, if your driver turned out not to have the proper insurance? How cheap would it be, Andrew, if the driver physically or even sexually assaulted your wife or your daughter? How cheap would it be if the driver turned out to be a crook? You see, cheap is not necessarily cheap. Cheap when it's the product of willful, systematic deregulation, stripping away all the protections that our people have and have had in the public transport system, when we had tubes and trains that had enough staff on it to come to the aid of people in distress, to help your old mother on and off the train, a cab driver who had to meet a good character test, who was regularly subjected to the most rigorous Ministry of Transport checks and regulation, a driver who had to know every street in London, a driver who had to know the best way to get you to your destination, a driver that you could trust. That's more expensive, Andrew, but it's cheaper in the long run, as many, many, many Uber passengers have already found. You see, the right wing knows the price of everything and the value of nothing. The value of drivers you can trust, who know London, who are London, is not to be sniffed at for the sake of a few pounds saved, if you're lucky, on an Uber transport ride. And if you're unlucky, you end up in the accident and emergency if it's not been closed by the very same politicians who brought you Uber. Uber, for me, is the personification of red in tooth and claw free market capitalism, with no regulation, no standards. Standards, Andrew, is what I'm talking about here. And it is the deregulation of our lives, the scrapping of standards, the melting of all that was solid into air, the profaning of all that was sacred. That is what is wrong with this country. Uber is a $50 billion idea, born of the most rapacious buccaneering capitalism. It doesn't even exist as a transport company. It has no office. It has no telephone. It claims to be merely the producer of an app based in Amsterdam, where coincidentally it pays virtually no tax. And it has been allowed to spread like a virus across London and other cities too. So, Andrew, I'm tiring of your endless cascade of missing the point. Sean Caden says, "I'm 100% behind the black cab driver. Uber muppets on sat-navs in London doesn't cut it. Save the taxi," says Sean.
Introducing